What's happening, guys? Silent Mike, Super Training Gym, Mark Bell's Powercast, here to talk about a hot topic of conjugate method Westside training for raw lifters. First, let's talk about what Westside is. Westside is a style of training. It is also a gym made popular and famous by the powerlifting coach and legend Louis Simmons. Louis Simmons is not only a powerlifter, but one of the best coaches of all time. He opened the gym Westside for top-level lifters and created his own methods within the conjugate method to help his lifters break world records time and time again. It's proven, hands down. Westside and Conjugate were very, very popular for geared lifting, single ply and multi-ply powerlifting. Geared lifting, if you don't know, is made up by squat suits, bench shirts, and often a deadlift suit. These suits are thick canvas or denim suits that allow you to lift more weight. Kind of like a slingshot. The bench shirt and squat suits do allow you to overload more than you could do raw, but they also, unlike the slingshot, have a lot of skill involved and take a lot of years and practice to get better at them. Like I said, Westside is a gym, but Conjugate is a style of training. The Conjugate method is based on 2 upper body days and 2 lower body days a week. If you're a powerlifter, those days are 2 bench days and then 2 squat and deadlift days. If you're an athlete, crossfitter, strongman, they could involve overhead, cleans, jerks, snatches. It can involve any exercise you need for your sport or your weakness. Within those 2 upper body and 2 lower body days, one is dedicated to maximum effort work and the other one is dedicated to dynamic effort work. In the Westside style of training, the maximum effort work often, not always, but often has you working up to a heavy set of 1, maybe 2, maybe 3, but most likely a 1, so you can grind and fight against a heavy weight, the heaviest weight you can handle that day in whatever particular exercise. The Conjugate method is the same, but Westside often uses specialty bars, bands and chains, and often a box squat. You can probably see it on the internet, people using reverse bands, safety squat bars, cambered bars, buffalo bars, boxes to squat on, chains, and many good mornings, tons of different things to allow them to get stronger and focus on a weakness. In conjugate training, you don't necessarily need any specialty bar, any bands, any chains, or any box. You could just simply vary the reps, the weight, and also slight variations in the exercise. If you're using a straight bar for squats, you could possibly do pause squats from anywhere 1, 2, 3, 5, 10-second pauses. You could vary the weight within that. You could also do front squats, a high bar, close stance squat, a wide stance, low bar squat. Pause with all 3 of those. And the deadlift, same thing. You could do deficits, pauses, different rep schemes. Same with the bench, wide grip, close grip, longer pauses, spoto press, a number of different things within just the straight bar. On dynamic effort day, it is often the same rep schemes, 1, 2, or 3, but the goal is to move fast and get more volume in. So typical Westside is, by Louis Simmons, deadlift are singles, squat or doubles, and bench or triples on dynamic effort day. His thoughts are, when you're using 50 to 60% of the weight of your 1 rep max, to perform those reps, maybe a triple in the bench for example, it would take the same amount of time as a heavy 1 rep max in a meet competition style, because you're using such a lighter weight. Besides the main goal of those days being the maximum effort single, the dynamic effort getting 10 sets of 3, 7 sets of 3 to get more volume, work on form and speed. After that, it's very important for Westside and Conjugate for you to focus and choose exercises that bring up and strengthen your weakness. If you have weak lockout, maybe you do block pulls, Dimmel deadlifts, stiff leg deadlifts, good mornings. If you're slow off the ground, maybe you do deficits or some front squats to work on your quads. If you're a slow lockout on the bench, maybe you hammer your triceps and shoulders. If you have trouble off the chest, maybe do dumbbell presses. The whole goal of Westside and Conjugate is to bring up your weaknesses and bring up the variations of the lifts around the main lifts, so then when you go back to the competition style lift, it also increases. Some things that I would probably change when it comes to running the Conjugate, a raw lifter, is the percentages are often off a little bit from a typical Westside or Conjugate split. Louis Simmons recommends on dynamic day to use 50 to 60%. Now, this 50 or 60% is off your competition lift, your competition 1 rep max. For a geared lifter, that's in a suit, knee wraps, the whole shebang. And a bench, that's a bench shirt, the whole thing. But in dynamic effort, it's typically raw for the bench and in briefs for the squat. So for a raw lifter, I typically recommend boosting up that percentage from maybe 60 to 70 to 70, even 75%. They also pretty much always use accommodating resistance on the dynamic day. That's bands or chains. This makes the weight heavier at the top, lighter at the bottom. So you're exploding into the chain, exploding into the band. It makes you move faster. This transfers for all lifts, all athletes, raw, geared, anything. The faster you move, the stronger you're going to be, the more weight you're going to be able to handle. But sometimes for a raw lifter, bands, chains, reverse bands, all that, even block pulls and deficits can take you away from the motor pattern and skill of the competition lifts, which is very important. The other thing I may change for the raw lifter is just overall volume. So on a max effort day, like I said, typical Westside is to work up to a 1 rep max. But there's no reason why you have to do that every single week, week in, week out. You can change the variation by reps and sets. Maybe on your max effort day, you want to do a high bar close stance squat, and you want to work up to the best set of 5 you can. You can also do drop sets, or what Mark calls a secondary barbell movement. So after your main movement of working up to a high triple of close stance high bar squat, maximum effort for that day, then you could drop the weight, go to your competition style high bar, low bar, competition stance, and why not do 3 sets of 5 there? Or the opposite. Maybe you're doing a front squat max effort day. So you're doing a top set of 1, max effort front squat. Then after that, go to a pause squat, 5 sets of 3. Just to get in the extra volume that I think is needed for a raw lifter to get stronger and to get better at the lift. As in any program, Westside, Conjugate, linear, daily undulating periodization, whatever you decide to do, the law of specificity still plays a role. You still have to practice for what your goal is and for what your sport is. If you're a basketball player, which I've trained plenty of basketball players, we box squat all the time. Box squat strengthens your hams, strengthens your glutes, works on your hips, works on explosive reaction. But if you're a raw squatter with a narrow stance and you lift in a heel, it will help strengthen your hips and glutes and can help up your strength, but you also have to find your groove with your movement. Practice your exact movement for the exact game that you're doing, in that case powerlifting, 1 rep max, 3 attempts at a meet. So what I suggest is if you're doing conjugate or any style training, the wider the variation will be further away from the meet. So if you're 20 weeks out from your next competition, you can do chains, bands, reverse band, box squat, upside down, backflip move. It doesn't matter because the goal of that movement is just to get generally stronger. It's a more general movement to go against bands with a safety squat bar on a box. But as you get closer to a meet, maybe 12, 8, 4 weeks out, you need to go back to the straight bar. You need to walk it out if you're walking it out. You have to use sleeves if you're using sleeves, wraps if you're using wraps, with the commands you're going to use, and handle heavier weights the closer to the meet. It's no different than handling a set of 10. You don't want to do a max effort set of 10 when you're 4 weeks out from a meet. I mean, maybe you do, and if your coach told you to, by all means go ahead. Maybe he has something else in mind, but typically you want to handle more like triples and 5s because they're closer to a set of 1 that you're going to have to perform on the platform in a couple weeks. Any style of training can work for anyone. 1, you have to find out what you like mentally. Mentally, what you like the most is what you're going to stick to. 2, you're going to have to find out what your body responds to best in terms of gaining muscle and gaining strength. And that might not be the same for every single lift. The deadlift, maybe you'll need more volume than you do in your bench. Maybe your bench responds well to high intensity. And maybe your squat responds very well to a bunch of variations. So you are doing box squats and reverse bands, cambered bars, and safety squat bars. But you'll never know unless you try it. So I suggest people try a lot of things. Seek out coaches stronger than you, smarter than you, more experienced than you, or more experienced than you in this certain type of training. Learn from everyone you can. Try different things. Have fun with it. There's battles of what programs works and what coach is better. There's obviously going to be better coaches and better programs suited for you. But find out what you like best. Have fun with it, guys. I hope that clears up a little bit of how I would train for a conjugate raw lifter, the difference between Westside, and a little bit of difference of geared lifting compared to raw. Like that bitch, share that bitch, subscribe to that bitch. If this helped you out at all, guys, please share it for me. Thanks, I'm out.